Hello, everyone. Good morning. Thank you for joining us. I hope everyone let us know for sure that you can hear us online. If you would, please, if you could type something in the chat or unmute and say something. Either way, we'd appreciate it. Oh, yeah. Thank you. Thank you for the thumbs up. Thank you today for joining us at our 2024-2025 Qualified Allocation Plan public hearing. It's really hard for me to think that we're talking about 24 and 25 already, but here we are. As usual, we really appreciate all of the time and effort that everyone's put into participating in the focus groups, the board, listening session. So thank you for that. Today, we do have, I just want to quickly make sure we run through the staff that we have here in person. From DED, we have
Christina Zink, Housing Program Manager, Disaster Recovery.
Michelle Grimes, DED Housing Home Program.
Cassandra Stark, DED HCM.
Sarah Dakota, Low-Income Housing Tax Credit Allocation Manager.
Pam Otto, Low Income Housing Tax Credit Allocation Assistant Manager, something like that.
Robin Ambrose, Deputy Director of Programs and Marketing.
David Young, IT.
Today, specifically, his goal was IT. Thank you very much for that. We also have some NIFA staff online. Kelly Schultz for sure, Joe Spitzen. Kelly, you all know Kelly. She's our director, our manager of compliance. I'm like Tim. I'm creating new titles today. And then Joe Spitzen, whose title I never remember because it's very long, but he works in our community engagement team. So you probably see him a lot with webinar Wednesdays and working with the conference and things like that. So we would like to go ahead and start out today. You know, in the past, we've said, let's do 5 minutes. We just ask that you be respectful of the time. I'm not going to start a timer, but please remember there's a lot of people that may want to comment. So if you start feeling that maybe you're getting a little long-winded, please know that we will come back if we need to. But we want to give everyone the opportunity to speak. Pam, did you do a sign-up sheet for speaking?
Yeah, I did.
Okay, I don't know if everyone had a chance to sign in. If you wanted to speak, you don't need to, but we'll start with the list. And then for the online individuals, we will go ahead and just raise your hand, and then we'll call on people to make sure that we're not all talking over each other. Okay, the first public comment, or our first commenter, will be Mr. Darren Smith, Park Icon.
I'll slide up here.
Yeah, thanks.
I didn't know.
I
you were
don't
gonna go
bite.
in order. I didn't want to.
Well, you're a lucky man.
Okay, so just some comments on the QAP and application. First of all, let's see. This is our 2 cents on 4 beds or larger. 1,500 square foot 4-bedroom apartment is a very large apartment. Having a 5-bedroom apartment is almost unheard of at 1,600 square foot. We just simply don't feel that it's an efficient use of LXTC. We would recommend no more than 1,200 square feet for a 4-bedroom. Comment number 2, QCTs and neighborhood points. In Omaha, for example, North and South Omaha, QCTs, choice neighborhoods in both North and South Omaha. It's where almost all of the ARPA money is going, multiple pots of ARPA money. CDBG, TIF, Section 108. So a lot of the funding out there right now is being driven to those areas. So our biggest question is how to not over concentrate in those areas. And if you're not using the diversitydatakids.org model as a mechanism to balance some of that and get some housing out in, say, outside the 480 loop in Omaha, what is that mechanism going to be? And then our third comment, development of housing in greater Nebraska. When that came out, we were under the impression that would be a non-metro scoring component only. So we were surprised to see that metro applications were getting those points as well. We 100% applaud developers in rural Nebraska. We've done rural development in Iowa, and we know it's not easy. So we don't want to take anything away from them. However, the way I think the intention versus the implementation, I don't think it's going to turn out well for NIFA. Right now, someone who gets the 2 points in Nebraska can do an application in Omaha, for example, and would score better than we do. And I don't see how that is appropriate or fair. So metro versus non-metro scoring is one issue. It's under the incentivized development across rural Nebraska. This is why, to me, it's just a non-metro issue. But it doesn't really even go as far as you might think it would to incentivize those that don't get the points to do development in rural Nebraska, because one, you have to get the points to get an allocation. And between 2022 and 2023, 18 allocations. Only 3 allocations did not get those points, 2 developers. Among the non-metro allocations, only 1 developer did not get those points, and they did not get an allocation. They were an alternate. So, long story short, without these points, you're much less apt to get an allocation. And it tends to concentrate, it can be perceived as a preferential pool of developers, which I don't think is anyone's intention. I don't think it's what NIFA wants, but it is also, I just think it's gonna lead to fewer and fewer developers getting more and more allocations, which we've seen happen. And I'm not taking anything away from those developments, because we all have good developments. But for example, in Iowa, they've had to implement an open projects limitation because they've had so few developers have so many projects. And I'm just concerned that that's the way it's going to go in Nebraska as well. So we would recommend, first of all, making a non-metro scoring item only. If you really want to incentivize rural development, somehow just give rural developers 1 or 2 points. I know that's not easy because they're scored separately anyway, but just for reference, Iowa recognizes LIHTC experience by awarding 1 point for developers who have received 8609 on 2 LIHTC developments in 5 years, and 2 points for developers who have received 8609s on 3 LIHTC developments in 5 years. Just as a way to recognize experience overall based on 8609 and completion of developments, not whether they're rural or urban. And that's in any state, not just Iowa, just as a comparison. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. You have a written you want to share that written or no? Great. Thank you very much. Okay, and just real quickly, those of you who are not familiar with this process, is that we don't interject a lot. This is really your opportunity to tell us your thoughts. But what we do is take the written comment, and then we will respond in writing and publish that when we as well with the written comment, so that you will have the thought process and a response to what you've shared with us. Next, we have Kathy Messner.
Yeah, and I'd asked to be moved to the bottom of the list. I actually just came. If the rest of you guys get it wrong, I'll speak. Bar Darren's okay, so.
Thanks.
No pressure, Chris.
Yeah, none.
I wrote it and it's been reviewed.
Carly, you're next.
These are the comments on behalf of hobby development. There's a lot of stuff that we like about the new QAP. I'm glad there's still a threshold deficiency correction process to help keep good projects from being thrown out on a technicality. We're excited about the opportunity to apply for DEP funding on 4% applications, and we appreciate the opportunity to examine re-syndication using straight 4%, no AHTC. Couple areas of concern. Points are given for incorporating market rate units within a project. We'd like to see points awarded for 100% life tech units that are integrated into a mixed income neighborhood. That would still support NIFA's goal of incentivizing mixed income developments. I'm a little concerned about needing to have the release of funds to apply for more DED funds, especially between the 24 and 25 9% cycle, since they're condensed a little bit. There's things that are out of the developer's control to get release of funds. Like right now, we're waiting to hear about our gap financing before we can get release of funds. So there's just things that we can't control if we have it or not. Design standards awards a point for the solid brick and stone. We would like to see that point also awarded to include other equally durable, attractive, but more affordable building materials, for example, hardy plank siding. Let's see, little clarification on the site control. It now requires an appraisal if the seller is an interested party. We would like to define what an interested party is, and then what happens with that appraisal if the sale price deviates from the appraised value. I'm a little confused about the supportive services, that it still has the owner's paid supportive services, but you're talking about the free referral website, so I'd like a little clarification on that. I'll do it. Thanks, guys.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate it. Do we have anybody raised hand online? No. Okay, then we will go to Rob Woodlane.
Rob Woodland, Foundation Development. My first comment will echo what Carly said about the timing of being able to apply for DED funding. Kind of think that should be stretched out a bit further with the condensed timeframe of the previous round. Second comment would be on the schedule of dates of application deadlines. It references a link to the CDBG DR of the amount of funding available, but when you click on that link, the amount that is available, still available, is not there, and that I could find. So maybe clarifying how much funds are actually available in that pool would be helpful. Under leverage and collaboration. So if you can donate land, well, one, I think you should add donated land leases as well as donated land to being an eligible resource. But if you're gonna, on the cost cert, you have to put a dollar amount on that to get a percent, to show a percentage of the project cost. And the only way really to do that with the tax code is to show the full dollar amount and to show a capital contribution. And are you doubling up then on double counting, you're donating land and you're getting credit for a capital contribution that matches that if it's from a related party. So I think that needs to be clarified, that doubling up is or isn't allowed there. And then the last thing I had was under the natural disaster designation. It references 3 years from it references disasters from 3 years ago. And some, like the flooding that happened in Fremont and Sarpy County is outside of that 3-year period. And so does some of those communities need to be removed? And then also on the list of eligible counties for the 2 points, some of those have expired also during the 3 years, and some others have been added. And so I would just recommend clarifying what eligible counties are, and does that 3-year period need to go 4 years, or does it just has it already served its purpose? So thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Chris Lenz.
Thank you for extending the 5-minute period.
I didn't want you to have to
I'll come back.
shoot that man.
We're just gonna, Chris Lentz, Messenger Development Company, we're just gonna address 3 items in the QAPN application that are concerning to us. The first is on the application page 4, as mentioned previously, the dates and the timing for applying for DED home funds in the next round. The 2023 and prior, in order to file, or in order to apply in 2024, you have to have release of funds for those 2 years of projects that were awarded in 2022 and 2022 that counted for the 2 years for 22 and 23. The 2022 application date was March 16th. The award date was June of 22. The 23 application date was July of 22 and the award date was October. So in 2022, we received 4 awards with the following gap financing provided by DED, one without any DED funds, one with trust funds, one with home funds, and one with DR funds. And I do want to stress my comments today are in total support of staff that's here that we work with daily. They're doing the best that they can. I think they have a very difficult task to try and meet these requirements that we're not even sure that the housing team understood the consequences of putting these dates in the way that they are. So in no way am I concerned with the existing staff. This is just, I think, an overall program issue that needs to be taken care of. So as of today, the project with no gap financing from DED, we closed that in November of 22. So that was 7, 8, 9, 10, that was 5 months later. So that project closed and we started construction. Project with trust funds received release of funds on January 24th of this year, 7 months from award. The project with home funds received release of funds this Monday, the 27th, 9 months from award. The project with CDBGR funds has not received our release of funds yet. And then I also would like a clarification for the CDBGR. What is award agreement stage or greater in order to get approval to apply for additional funds? The other 2 programs state release of funds, but anybody that I've talked to does not know what award agreement stage or greater it is. No contracts have been signed as of today, and no projects have closed on either our debt or equity. So regarding the 23 round, as of today, all 3 projects that we received for the 23 round, 2 have home funds, 1 has DR funds. None of those projects have received release of funds, and according to the revised NIFA DED application, we cannot apply for DED funds in 24 round if we have not secured release of funds by July 19th for projects that were awarded in October. Though I agree with the premise the project should be at release of funds from a previous year for a developer to apply for the next round, it appears to me that the timing for the change is impossible to achieve for both DED staff and developers. DED needs to remember that 2 full years of funding were awarded in 22, and now we're expected to receive release of funding for the second round by July 19th for projects awarded in October. Given the current state of the program and the unprecedented length of time it's now taking to achieve release of funds, it's currently not feasible to receive release of funds in order to access future rounds for home funds and other gap funding. The requirements for the developer to close with DED have not fundamentally changed in the 20+ years I've been working with this funding source. What has changed is the length of time that elapses from award to release of funds. The rule of thumb started out as originally about 4 months, and then over the last 5 years, it's increased to about 6 months. Today, we're waiting a minimum of 9 months to close with DED and receive release of funds. We should not have to wait 9 months to close with DED, especially considering that NIFA changed the timing for its tax credit rounds to help us secure contractors so that we can begin construction in early spring. We are now at the 1st of April, and the only dirt that we have moved on any project awarded in 2022 has been a project without DED sourced gap financing. So it's our recommendation that the 24 application year should only reference the 2022 funding round and those projects that were awarded at the beginning of the year. And then the 2025 application should reference a 2023 round. If it's not changed, then we're requesting that NIFA maybe add a point or 2 for projects that are not requesting any funding at the time from DED. Surrounding states I've worked in are funding most, if not all, of their tax credit projects without any state or federal gap financing from HUD. The threshold full application requirement dates. With the change from threshold application submission to full application on July 19th, the changes in the DED section of the joint application further emphasize the need to question prohibiting access of the funds if release of funds is not received in time. It's my understanding that once an application is submitted on July 19th for full review, financial and material changes are not allowed and really not feasible. Developers must need to know today if their projects are eligible to receive any funding well in advance of the July 19th date. I mean, all the developers are putting projects in performance together now. So it's difficult to say we're going to go ahead and access funds if we don't know when those release of funds are going to come in, and we cannot make a change after July. The changes proposed by DED will obviously limit the number of applications NIFA is going to receive that need gap funding in order to be feasible. The result will be that most tax credit applications will be submitted without DED funding and will then need to apply for more tax credits than we've seen in the past. Last one, I promise. Application efficient housing productions on page 52 of the application. Efficiency calculations are now being proposed to use total development costs, excluding land reserves and NIFA fees instead of eligible basis. I firmly believe that this change is going to have several unintended consequences. It's always been mentioned that Nebraska is one of the only states that is concerned about the efficient use of tax credits. And I applaud NIFA's effort to be good stewards with the credits we receive in the most transparent ways possible. The current efficiency calculations utilizing eligible basis allow everyone to see the financial structure of a project, specifically through the submission of the NIFA Form 111. We all need to understand the difference between A, total project costs, B, eligible basis, and C, amortized costs. The formula is A equals B plus C. Some projects are eligible to receive tax credits. Some project costs are eligible to receive tax credits. Some are not. The project costs that are not eligible to receive tax credits are paid by amortized debt or other equity or gap financing. Having a developer reduce eligible basis costs to ask for less credits is not the same as hiding or totally removing the cost from the budget just to get funded. If that cost is reduced or eliminated from eligible basis, it still has to be covered by other financial resources. I see two possible scenarios that's going to occur possibly from developers to circumvent the new formula. And I'm not giving away any trade secrets here. One, land costs are going to be artificially inflated due to developers moving infrastructure work or other costs to the purchase price of the land because that's excluded. And having a deal with the seller to reimburse them for those costs later with additional debt post-award. Reserves, especially rent-up reserves, are going to be overfunded to move project costs into that account. So both examples are not illegal per se, they're just a few ways to reduce project costs just for the sake of better efficiency. The second scenario, which I hope our syndicators and any of the banks in the room will address today, is that total development costs will be reduced as a whole just to achieve more points. This is a more realistic outcome that I see happening. I'm going to reduce my construction costs low enough to score well in all three categories. The problem with this scenario is that the true construction costs still exist and still have to be addressed after award, either through the additional debt, higher equity pricing, or requesting additional credits. Basically, NIFA syndicators and banks will not be receiving true project costs at application underwriting. And I understand this issue, and those of you that have worked in other states, this issue is not a prevalent issue in other states when you're manipulating basis. Actually, you want as much basis as you can get, typically in any other state. Here, because of the efficiency points, that's where we're reducing our eligible basis in order to ask for less credits. Well, no other state does that. So I can understand where it could seem confusing or under the table as far as, well, why are you pulling that out? That's not fair. It doesn't matter. I'm pulling it out of basis. I still have to cover that expense with my debt or other sources. So if we leave the efficiency calculations they are now, we can at least see a true picture of what total development costs are, what the proposed eligible basis is, and what costs are contributing to debt and other funding sources. The current formula is a win for NIFA since it allows a project to ask for less credits and then absorb those costs into debt and other non-NIFA funding sources and equity. I yield my time.
Thank you
Thank
very much. Connor.
Connor with Excel Development Group. I'll address some of my comments. I emailed you, our comments, and I'll give you a hard copy as well. Overall, I think, NIFA Nebraska has a good QAP. I mentioned this with last year's QAP. I think it does a good job balancing location points, cost efficiency points, leverage points. It doesn't skew like some other states to certain categories. I think it's a good balance. So as a whole, I think the QAP is good. Just a few comments on some of the changes. Let's hear, we do appreciate NIFA changing how, the rehab projects will score if there's not 4. I think it was, kind of definitely not intended for NIFA to have all the ones in the previous round score 0 and efficiencies, not really, fair comparing them to projects 2 years ago, especially with the interest costs and construction price increases. So I think having that weighted factor, I think will help affect, the true cost efficiencies of, the current rehab projects being submitted. So I do appreciate that change, or that suggested change. One for the housing in Greater Nebraska points. I saw that there was a new units added into that section as far as, what counts towards that points. I think that's just unnecessary and kind of, in a sense, handicaps rural towns. I just think it's just unnecessary to add that. Speaking to rural towns, I was just at Auburn a couple weeks ago. It's like they need any housing. They can take, rehab projects of older houses, new units. They need any housing they can get, and handicapping them just to new units, even though maybe the need's not there, I think is unnecessary. Just to be honest with you there. And it's hard. I know rural developers, it's hard as it is to make rural projects work. And, we're asking a lot from these rural towns to commit to these rural projects. So, I think that's just an unnecessary update to the QAP, or, just having it new units and rehab projects, just adding that wordage, I would recommend. Quick comment on the, the resyndication side of things. I know it looks like the plan is to change back to the 15 years when you can do it for 4% bond deals. I don't see why the 9% isn't the same way, make that change to the 9% as well. It's the same housing, maybe one more units, but it doesn't make any sense to me, I guess, why that's 2 different time periods. I just suggest making that same change to 9% deals. I get maybe if you're trying to get more of the rehab projects to combine and do 4% bond deals. But we'll obviously look at doing that as well. I think that's a good idea, but I think having that 15 years for both 9% and bond deals just makes sense. And then just last comment, like others have reiterated, I think, and I've already talked to Michelle briefly about it, is, kind of looking at changing that time period for release of funds for DED and the housing trust funds or home funds, just because, depending on, I don't know, it wasn't really clear in the language, if you get awarded this October home or trust funds, and then if you need to release the funds, by that, even that application date, that's like 6 months there. That's pretty tight as it is. It's doable, but like you said, a lot of projects that, that's unattainable or out of our control. So definitely, I recommend looking at that or doing the previous year's award. Yep, that's all I have to say.
Thank you very much. I've got your
You got
email
it.
copy, but if you want to provide that, that's fine. Thank you. Okay, anyone else in the room before we go to the online for the Zoom participants?
I just wanted to add a comment.
Teresa, could you introduce yourself? Sorry.
Teresa Kyle with Prime Sites,
Thank you.
part of Poppy Development. I just wanted to add on the efficiency. I believe in being good stewards of the money. But there's an offset of that. I had an architect come into my office the other day with a phenomenal design. And in that design, it helped create security without having cameras and that sort of thing. And we got to talking about it and I said, wow, let's go for it. And the comment was, I don't know how I can make this work because it's going to cost more, because where they were putting the kitchen, where they were putting the bathrooms and stuff. So somehow we got to balance being good stewards with new innovative designs, because I think we are crippling the creativeness of some of our architects by the efficiency housing. And my response would be maybe we create a innovative design area, because I think we're crippling good projects that aren't going to score well, but bring a lot more to our tenants and the community. And that's the only thing I have to say on that.
Thank you. If anyone online would like to raise their hand, or if you can't find that button, go ahead and just put something in the chat. We'll be happy to call on you. If you aren't able to do either of those things, if you'd like to unmute yourself and introduce yourself and speak, that is fine as well. We just want to make sure you have an opportunity to comment. Okay.
That is a no.
Do I get to speak?
I guess we can go back to it. Just a guess.
All right. Okay, well, I always think it's helpful to have a few examples. First of all, I think Chris did a pretty good job of talking about why total development costs is a more transparent way to the way we do total development costs right now is a more transparent way than what's being proposed. So I'm going to leave that one alone. I do want to comment. I think you got it wrong on this business of changing so that we can't make alterations, significant alterations between threshold and final full applications. I think you get better projects. I know that my projects over the years have gotten more fine-tuned in that period of time between threshold and final full, both from a development, a design standpoint and from a financial standpoint. And I think having that extra time to think about it, look at how we can make different things work in better ways is and making those change. And this year in particular, if DED is going to paint us into a corner on this timing business, we definitely need to be able to change between threshold and final full. So I don't know what you're going to do with that. Michelle, you're looking at me. You know how I feel about that business, because I just think DED has been under so much stress. They've essentially become a federal agency this year with all of the new stuff that's been piled on top of them. And their turnaround time, they would admit has been awful. We submitted a document for simple review and signature in December. We got it back in March, late in March. These were routine documents, not anything unusual. And so leaving the dates the way they are right now makes it impossible for us to And for them, I think, to get this work done and get to release of funds on all of these projects and definitely to agreement stage on all of these projects by that July date. And so, but between July and the final full application date, maybe we could get more of those things done. And so I just think we need to be able to have flexibility there. And finally, Carly brought up something about this appraisal requirement. That's a really bad change, in my opinion, because this is one of the things we ran into that cost us a month to 6 weeks on our first DR project, was because the HUD consultants didn't like the fact that we were selling property that a related party was selling property to the project at a higher price than what they bought the project for. Well, we were selling improved lots to the project, not raw ground. And the related party had purchased it as raw ground. And it took us, I don't know, at least 6 weeks to get that one past the HUD consultants. So, and appraisals are expensive, they're time consuming. And in those circumstances where you're trying to guess probably a year out on what your infrastructure costs are going to be in order to sell improved lots to the project, it just makes it really, really difficult. Yeah, I was pretty short.
Thank you. Not for the short part, but for the. Okay, one last chance for those of you online joining us via Zoom. Okay. Well, anyone else before we close this meeting?
Can we submit written comments? Just
Yes, right now you can submit written comments, that's good. And those of you online, please feel free to email right now if you'd like to email your written comments. Thank you again for everyone attending. Your participation is very important and we appreciate your feedback. Thank you. And with that, we're done. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
Yay.
Yeah. So.